So by now you should have identified an appropriate job ad and you should have done some research on the company to give you a good idea of what the job description entails and who the people are that might be looking at your resume. So now you're ready to move on to the next phase of the project, which is to start drafting parts of the resume and cover letter. So let's go to the evidence of writing page and see what is involved here. 3 short tasks. The first one is to create an unformatted outline of what you think you'll use in your resume. So basically, think of this as a brainstorming exercise. If you copy and paste these items into a Microsoft Word document, okay, just so that you can have it as a reference while you're brainstorming, just start listing anything that comes to mind when you think of schools, jobs, and other experiences and skills. And this is basically just a quick brainstorming exercise. It's not meant to take long. In fact, just sit down for 10 minutes and see how far you get. It's as if you're just writing on pen and paper and then typing up what you've written and putting it in a Microsoft Word document. So it might look like this. It's just a really rough draft. So when I say unformatted, I just mean typing it simply on your Microsoft Word document. Formatting would look like this, where you use, headings and bullet points and set things off with capital letters versus regular set text down here. So we'll talk more about formatting later, but for now, this is just a quick draft. It's meant to just get something down on paper that you can come back to as you are further in the drafting process. So that's step one. The next step is to do some reading in your textbook, and in this reading, you will encounter what's called the AIDA model, which is a standard business acronym that stands for getting attention, building interest and desire, and motivating your reader to act. So just think of that as a model for how to structure your cover letter. So when you're reading about this in the business communications textbook, it will describe an example of how the AIDA model applies to cover letters, and it will annotate different parts of the AIDA model in a sample cover letter. So pay close attention to that. And after you're done reading that, I'd like you to pick 3 strategies that they recommend for starting your cover letter and then trying out some sentences that you think you'll use to start out your cover letter. So for example, here's what it might look like. I picked 3 strategies from the textbook, and one of them was to show how strong skills will benefit the organization. So this is the sentence that I wrote, and you can read these more in detail later and come back to them as a reference. But basically, I thought this is one way I could start my cover letter. So I drafted that, put that down on paper, and then moved on to another strategy that is a little bit different, where I describe how I heard about the job opening and what I have to offer. And these sentences came from some drafting exercises I did before I wrote the cover letter to apply for teaching positions at URI. So I'll show you what that draft eventually turned into a little bit later. But that's strategy 2, and then in strategy 3, I chose a different idea here, referred to publicized company activities. So before I wrote the cover letter, I poked around on the writing and rhetoric department website, and I found this quote that I liked, where the writing department chair said, "We do writing that gets things done," and she was the person who's going to read my resume, so I wanted to make sure I used that quote in my cover letter to catch her attention, and I thought this is another way that I might be able to start. So I just drafted these 2 sentences here. So that's one way you might set it up, and you can draft, lots of different ideas and then choose one that you like best later when you get ready to write the final letter. So that's the second step. The third step is to draft any 3 other sentences you might use in your cover letter, and these sentences should build interest and desire and motivate to action. So if you think of the AIDA model, just think of any sentences you could potentially use in your cover letter. They don't have to be in any particular order, but just try practicing this skill of building interest and increasing desire, and your textbook will describe how to do that. For example, with these 2 sentences, when you build interest and desire, those sentences usually come in the middle of your cover letter, and they're going to describe your strongest selling points or your strongest qualifications for the job. So this is what I did here as I applied for a teaching position to teach Writing 104 and 106. So if you look at those sentences, think about how you might do the same for your particular job ad. Okay, so this is what I did for building interest and desire. And then this was what I thought I might say at the end of my cover letter. So a concluding sentence, okay, that addresses the opportunity I'm applying for again, and then this part here, motivating the reader to do something, to follow up, to invite me for an interview, etc. So that's really all I'm looking for in this assignment. It's just some drafting. The point is not to sit down and write the cover letter from start to finish, but just generate some ideas on paper that you can come back to and flesh out further as you describe the rest of your experience in a in the cover letter and resume. So this is just quick drafting exercises. They're not meant to take long, but they do require some thinking and reading. So again, this is steps 2 and 3. Read about the AIDA model, then draft some sentences in your letter. When you're done, go ahead and save this document with your name and either the word drafting or writing in the title, and then upload it to your Dropbox folder, Project 2, the Project 2 folder in Dropbox, or your working folder, and then make sure that that is submitted before the deadline of February 19th. Okay, and then go ahead and move on to the last phase, which is to complete everything. So sit down and write things from start to finish, and there's more instructions on the Project 2 page for how to move on.